Thank you for joining us tonight on our Speaker Series evening. Tonight we have Mr. John Godbout, founder of Prospector, and an entrepreneur that's focused a lot on place and impact. And tonight we'll be speaking about a recent purchase of the Sacred Heart Church in Waterville and plans for development. Thank you very much for coming. John.
Thanks, Jeff. It's good. Okay. I'll let everyone get settled there. Don't worry, I'm not looking at you, Mufadal. All right. Well, thanks again for having me. So I'm going to walk through some plans we've been thinking through for the former Sacred Heart Church. And what I'll say is, as I go through all this tonight, is nothing's really set in stone at this moment. We're footing the paperwork for a 501c3 that's going to govern the church portion of the property. And one of my ask at the end, and I guess I'm leading with it, is I'm actually asking for people to recommend board members or people that want to get involved with that nonprofit. So I'll give a website at the end. You can submit a form and reach out to us and we can have a chat. But that is a real request. I'm looking to build a board of community members that can help guide the use of the space. I've got some proposed uses, but would love to get as many community voices in this as possible. So a little bit about me. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. Some of you may know me from certain spaces and not other spaces. My name is John Godbout. I grew up in Biddeford, Maine. I'm a graduate of Colby College. I was fortunate enough to meet my wife there. We moved back in 2019. During the day, have 3 different jobs. One job is I have a startup called Prospector, which is an AI startup that does work with investing data in the mining industry. I have a second job, which is as the executive director, part-time executive director of the Capital Area New Mainers Project that is focused on creating community connection with our New Mainer community. And thirdly is I do real estate. And I do teach at Colby a little bit as well. Teach AI and ethics. So as I get into this project, I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. I think sometimes people may interact with me in my different jobs and think that's what's doing this property, or maybe Camp's doing this property, or this other thing. Really, this is separate from my role at Capital Area New Mainers Project. This is something I'm doing on my own. It's part of my own real estate company. There are obviously ways in which I would like that nonprofit camp to benefit from it, but really this is focused on the broader community of Waterville. My team. So first off, I'll talk a little bit about my father, who's really one of my big inspirations for this project. He renovated the St. Andre's Church down in Biddeford. He owns one of the biggest plumbing and heating businesses in the state, and he's my main advisor about how we would go about renovating, particularly the mechanicals and infrastructure of the church itself to make it habitable again. Drake Zimba and Katya are my 2 site managers helping me out. If you ever come over to the rectory and want to visit us, we're running co-working space right there right now. You may see one of them or myself around, but we're all working as a team to really bootstrap this place, make sure we can cover the basic operating expenses while we figure out how we're going to bring the whole property to life. So past experience. About a year and a half ago, I got asked by Dirigo Labs to do a presentation on a project I had done in Cincinnati. Natty, yeah. Yeah. So this was a building that was abandoned in Cincinnati. It was built in 1855, and I bought it from the city of Cincinnati for $15,000. And then through a series of historic tax credits and about $1.3 million worth of spend, we transformed it from this to that little picture on the right. And Dirigo Labs asked me to do a presentation on this. I did a very detailed one in August of 2024. And after that presentation, Garvin came up to me and said, "Hey, can you go check out this church with me?" And that was my start of the Sacred Heart journey. Over the past year or so, I had been doing property management on the church itself for Ware Butler on that property. And then this past September, after Hammond acquired Ware Butler, we secured a lease on the property to run it and make sure it was staying, because Ware Butler was no longer going to be using that as office space. So we rented it up, and then we worked towards a sale that completed in December. And so right now, the church is not active, but we are running the 2 adjacent buildings that I'll talk about as co-working spaces. And that is really focused on making sure we have enough cash to cover oil expenses, electric expenses, plowing, all the stuff that makes sure that space continues to operate and it's secure. So this is my project in Cincinnati. But most applicable, this is the St. Andrew's Church in Biddeford. It's roughly, I would say, about 1 3/4 size of Sacred Heart. The benefit of Sacred Heart, if anyone wants to fill out the form and come visit, you're more than welcome. I'll take you through. I actually love walking through it. It's in great shape. St. Andrew's Church was in a lot worse shape. Someone had stripped all the stained glass. They had stripped all of the pews. They had stripped the cross off the top. They had stripped the organ. The place had been stripped for everything. And so when my father got approached by Mind Place Teen Center, which originally had their first place in Westbrook, to do this in Biddeford, it was a really big project. It took about $3 million to bring that to life. I do not think that's what's going to take for Sacred Heart here, because it's in a much better shape. But it was a quite extensive project. If you search online for My Place Teen Center Biddeford, you'll find some videos. You can go check it out. But he is my big advisor and champion on this, and I'm really grateful to have his expertise as I think about the project. So, project overview. So one thing that I have noticed, I run a nonprofit where we put events on. I've noticed this is a post on What's Up Waterville, asking about community spaces for families to meet. And one gap that I've seen is that there's not a lot of places in Waterville where you can congregate inside with over 100 people. And really, I think the Sacred Heart Church is a really good opportunity to add that space in Waterville. And part of the thought here, and some of the ideas I'm going to propose, and like I said, this is where I'm really looking for input and feedback, is to make this a place that the community can call a hub. I'm using the name Taconic Commons because it's meant to be a common place for lots of different things to come together. Again, the idea would be to transform it into a community space with flexible space for maybe co-working, in addition to performing arts space, maybe a coffee cafe, maybe some indoor-outdoor space, some kind of like beer hall style table layouts, food stalls for families to come and meet, and a test kitchen where chefs could use it, rent out, have a license and access, monthly subscription to access a commercial grade kitchen if they're starting their own little food business, and then be able to sell the food inside the facility itself. Overall, the basic economic plan, is looking at about 50 construction jobs through the process of redevelopment, probably 30 plus ongoing jobs related to the various functions on the property. It would offer a 200-person plus gathering space. And there's roughly 49 spaces available for co-working across the 2 buildings right now. We're about 60% capacity right now at the moment. So. If you're not fully familiar with the property, this is a little drawing. The property encompasses 3 different buildings. There's quite a bit of parking back there. There's roughly 300 spots between the 2 parking lots. Downtown adjacent, the Colby shuttle goes right by, so I think it's a really attractive spot to also think about the overall connection to the Colby community as well as the downtown community. And up here, this little spot, this is the church itself. This is the rectory you'll hear me talk about, and this is the office building, and we have parking here and there. And really the idea is that for the moment, these 2 buildings will be office space, or continue to be office space. This is how Ware Butler was using it, and to make the church kind of a focus of a community center spot. I've done my history research. I hope it's correct. Please, I know there's folks in here that are congregates, but from my understanding, the founding of Sacred Heart as a parish starts in 1880. It was an alternative to the French Canadian parishes for the mostly Irish and Lebanese immigrants to the area. 1908, first construction with also some mass. So the basement that we now see as the soup kitchen was where the first masses were. Church was completed in 1930. In 1980, the soup kitchen was set up in the church. The last mass was held in 2006. And unfortunately, when COVID hit, the soup kitchen closed. That was the last time the building's been occupied. Did I get that right? Yeah?
There were several funeral masses and wedding masses that were...
Oh, after 2006? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Ware Butler officially purchased this in 2022. I know there's been a lot of proposals over the years as Ware Butler owned that property, but what I'm here tonight is to talk about what we're proposing forward for the property. So we closed this in December. We officially own it. As I said, there's the church, office building, and the rectory. Again, looking at doing some common space, shared commercial kitchen, coffee shop, classroom/dance studios in the basement, and maybe some spare co-working space because it's a big building. I've created a little diagram of the church, and this is sort of a rendering of an idea, right? This is the initial one. You can see there's the organ and the eye still in there. It's beautiful. There's all the stained glass. It's beautiful. We'd love to keep that. But one of the thoughts, and if you want to reach out afterwards and give me your thoughts on this, I am thinking about converting the pews into some tables that would be used. So if we're going to create this layout, those layouts could be actually made out of the pews themselves. The other option is to look at potentially doing an auction for those that I've had several folks reach out to me and wanting to buy actual pews. So that's an option. Just for looking for ways to cover some of the economic cost of holding the property, but also redeveloping the property. The other one is there's an organ in there. There's some work that would need to be, it does turn on, but it's not tuned. So the electricity and water work in the building, and so does heating. It's just that, a lot of it's been isolated and shut off just to conserve cost. And so there will be a decision at some point, and this is probably a decision the nonprofit makes, is whether to seek selling that organ in order to finance redevelopment of the church itself. So I throw that out there. Does that, yeah. This is the little chapel to the side. Selfishly, I'm hoping Churchill will roast his coffee in there. I don't know if he'll do it. I'm working on him. But the idea would be to have a little coffee shop and the little chapel to the side. This is just a rendering of a test kitchen, right? There's an existing commercial kitchen in there with fire suppression that passed in 2020. Cleaning that up, making it clean, redoing the fire suppression test, and trying to reinvigorate that as the space that could be shared and offer low monthly rentals for people that maybe want to start food businesses and have access to a commercial grade kitchen. And then classroom space, taking that downstairs, finding a flexible way. I think this all depends. I've talked to Elm City, I've talked to TNT Dance, I've talked to Waterville Creates. So the idea is to really engage these groups. There is a lack of performing arts space in general to run classes. And one of the ideas is it'd be really nice to have dance classes downstairs while the parents can wait upstairs, hang out with another kid. It's a nice image in my head. Selfishly, it's kind of what I want for my kids in this building. And then this is the rectory. It's in good shape. Just went through with the insurance assessor the other day. I just have to remove a wood stove. That's the major thing that they're concerned about. Other than that, it's doing well. We've got one minor pipe fix, but we're running it right now as co-working space. And usually over there most days when I'm not at Colby or down in Augusta. So. that's it. So I want to be able to answer your questions and get your feedback. That's really why I wanted to do this tonight. And I'm going to try to find more ways to do this. I am going in front of the planning board because we need to renew Ware Butler's zoning contract. So it's just basically to hold the same zoning contract Ware Butler held as a commercial office space. There will be down the future, once we finalize the whole development plans of the church, a larger planning board discussion on like the actual rezoning of the church itself once it goes to activation. Yes, ma'am.
I actually happened to live 2 blocks from there, and, you know, and my husband was council person at the time when, you know, when the concerns came up with the turning into an event center.
Mhm.
So Scott Neal is now the council person in that district.
Mhm.
I would really recommend you talk with him because clearly the previous plans, going into the evening and alcohol and undetermined time and
Yep.
how later the event's going to be really stirred up,
Yeah.
you know, folks. So I would say early on, you really need to think about its resident and even some folks, you know, my heart breaks that the rectory is a beautiful building to be office space instead of housing for something so beautiful. But
So I can't officially commit to it because I need to go rezone it. One concept that we have been talking about, but it will require me to go out front of the planning board, so please don't take this as what we're going to do because it does require this, is we do think that the rectory is probably well suited to become an inn, is one option. The housing option is another option as well. It's just a much more expensive option. But as an inn, the rectory is set up to have rooms with bathrooms attached to them. So we are considering those options at the moment. So.
yeah, there is the person across the street that has the right. I think
Yeah.
again, a lot of homes in our neighborhood have been converted into, you know, B&Bs, and
Mhm.
I do think that's, as someone who's also for
Yeah.
affordable housing, it's a bit of a concern.
Okay.
And I'm just saying that it's a loss, although I think the inn, that other inn is probably always busy, but
Yeah.
we do have a lot of affordable housing. They are developing right next to also the other property.
The other property next to us on the backside. Well, it looks like they had to do some lead abatement, from what I can tell. I think they had some lead abatement next door. Looks by what they had to do. So.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice to see the property plans for development.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, the office space at the moment is making sure that we can generate enough income to cover the expenses. It's not the end all be all. From a planning board perspective, that's the official use of the building. But we are considering ways to reactivate it. We do think housing or an inn are probably more economically sound long-term investments in that property. It's just a matter of the capital it'll take to get that property to that state to do that. It's a lot more because if you do an inn, you don't have to add. You're basically upgrading one kitchen, whereas if you do apartments, you have to add 3 kitchens. So that's the big concern. But we're going to talk to fire suppression and get opinions on all this stuff before we go to the planning board. Yes, Bruce.
I was in that rectory a few times, nice little gatherings. And how many rooms, so I remember,
What?
how many rooms were in the rectory?
Yeah, so there's a conference room when you enter. There's a dining room. There's an office on the first floor, and there's a kitchen, and there's kind of like a foyer area. On the second floor, there are 5 different rooms with 3 bathrooms. If the inn option was ever pursued, basically there are 2 rooms that are connected to a bathroom on each side, and then there's 1 room that's connected to a bathroom on the back side, its own private one. So it's set up. What I would think it was set up is for the deacons to have their own bathrooms with common rooms and a bedroom, right? Which makes a lot of sense. So, and then there's an attic up there, there's a bathroom in the attic, but from an egress standpoint, I don't think it's a viability for an apartment. So, yes, ma'am.
Just a suggestion or something to think about at some point. If something could be named after Father Goodrow, who was the long-time priest there.
Well, this is the exact kind of stuff I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah, either the Goodrow room or something,
Yeah, no, we could definitely do that. This is, I mean, Father Reggie was my priest growing up, and I remember we did something like that at St. Andres, so that means a lot. So thank you. Father Goodrow,
Yeah.
check in the head. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'm interested more about the, you mentioned about use as an art space,
Yeah.
performing arts, visual arts, and how what you would offer would fit in with what goes on at the Shub Center over there, or the former Railroad Square, which is now the Playhouse at Waterville Station.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in the Schuff Center, like for instance, Waterville Moves is always struggling for space at the Schuff Center and looking for space to go. So I think it works very much in tandem, and I know that Waterville Creates is looking for more space to do performing arts. There's a lot of the visual arts spaces that are there, but as far as performing art space, it's rather limited. And this is also where, you know, TNT Dance is running out of a house up in Fairfield, so there's been discussions about like how do they get downtown and find an accessible place where they could have parking and they can do events. So that is meant to be in conjunction with them. And I intend to fully incorporate, you know, and I'm asking Waterville Creates to actually participate as part of the nonprofit as well, so I want their input. And also, I think about like whatever is happening with Elm City Music and the Playhouse, right? Really want that kind of involvement into what we're planning because it needs to complement, not take away. I wouldn't want like someone to move out of a space that takes away from another spot in the community, right? It's meant to like add things, not take away, and that would be my hope. Yeah.
We have a question on Zoom. We were curious if a performance space would be a part of the plan, or is it just a plan for smaller rooms and practicing / lessons?
So I think from a performance space, that's a really good question because I'm not entirely sold on anyone, and I'd love to get feedback on this because in the basement you could maintain it as a performance space, but with flexible doors and stuff. I don't know enough about dance studios to know if that's enough soundproofing for that. So the alternative thing that if that's not an option would be to think about the sanctuary being a very flexible space where in some for some events the tables could be moved and we could do seating so that it could be a performing space versus that being in the basement. So those are the options, and that's the idea of really keeping this flexible. And again, this is why I'm not trying to set anything. I really want to get this kind of like little detailed inputs before we move into a full development plan. Yes, ma'am?
On the actual pew space,
Yeah.
400? Is that?
Yeah, it's what yeah, it could fit 400 people. I don't know what the fire will rate it for.
That's been a demand, right? That's been an ask for a long time from a lot of different folks in the area. We don't have.
Especially with the Elm closing, I know that's been a concern.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question of whoever's on Zoom? Okay. Are they happy? Good. Yes. Hi.
I'm Nate Felton. I work at Thomas College. I have a supporter and my colleagues in the society.
Hi. Good. Great.
Question for you. A lot of times space is underutilized.
Yeah.
It's one of the challenges that you have a lot of square footage that is only used for a short period during the day.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts around how you can maintain like high utilization and in doing so potentially also feed the coffee shop and other businesses that might be making revenue?
That's the hope, right? So the hope is to do this kind of thing. So, you know, right now the Capital Area Management Project runs English classes in the top floor of our office building. So they're renting that out. So I see that as a traffic item. I would like to find more ways to do that. I've thought about doing hot suppers once a week inside the sanctuary space to bring people together. The intent for the nonprofit would be to have someone who's like an event coordinator type that would both run the maintenance of the site, but also focus on trying to maintain utilization. And again, try to build these partnerships through the other nonprofits in our community where they need space. Is it good?
Yeah, that's great. You know, I've seen some people seem to be really working on issues, even as so socially oriented around loneliness and ending loneliness.
Yeah.
You know, and some of those initiatives are just like, what kinds of groups can we bring people together? Whether it's a book club or it's a focus group chat or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Things like that can cycle weekly that can keep people coming.
Yeah, and that would be the hope, right? In the same way that the AYCC is running classes for kids and youth to do all these things, right? I can imagine a place where there's the same kind of community connections that are happening in that space.
And is there ever, having those conversations with Senior Spectrum, do they have folks that are showing up.
You know, I've had the opposite conversation with Spectrum, which is that I've tried to do an event there, and it was really difficult to do it because of their catering contract. But you know, I pack meals over there every Tuesday. I'll make sure I ask that question. I would love to know that. I don't know what their space needs are.
That would be a good selling point. And you know, Diane was saying, I think Doreen, you know, hooking in with Scott here.
Yeah.
And you know, when Bogosian was planning this,
Mm-hmm.
he came to our South End Neighborhood Association meeting. He came to our dining room with his blueprint and the whole 9 yards, because what he didn't want was some old pickup truck in the hole here saying, "Oh, this ain't gonna happen."
Yeah.
And so he was really trying to get that buy-in from the neighborhood from the get-go.
Yes, and that is fully part of my plan here. And believe me, I will be doing more of these as we get closer to my discussions at the planning board. So I really want to avoid those surprises. Also, because when those previous rezoning questions happened, that happened without that individual owning the property. I own this property now, so this is all the risk is on me. And I want this to be a success. So.
What's your biggest challenge that you think you're going to face in the next near term?
Near term?
Is it funding? Is it...
I think funding will be a big part of it. I think I'm most worried about the cost of fire suppression and the cost of upgrading the climate control system of the property. The majority of the rest of the property is relatively low cost to bring back to life. Those two things are the things that are probably the most expensive. And making sure that we figure that out in a smart way is important. And also figuring out a way where we can reactivate a portion of the building. So, you know, a challenge right now is it's considered vacant by the insurance companies. So it's very expensive for insurance on that property. And so one interim aspect I've been looking at is potentially activating the little, there's an office that's just off of the basement, and finding a way to get that activated and getting maybe a bathroom so that we can redesignate it as a non-unoccupied space, so that at least we can bring the insurance cost down, because it is quite a lot. Happy to pay it, happy to make it work, want to protect the place. But those are, you know, challenges that we're working through to make sure that we have the cash flow to carry this thing as we work on the broader effort to bring this thing back to life. Yes, ma'am?
How many parking spaces, because again, thinking back with the neighborhood.
Yeah.
When you talk about a 400-person event.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks were concerned about the traffic going in and out.
Yeah.
So even if it ended at 8 o'clock, if you're talking about attracting 400 people,
Yeah.
when you think about a church that was built in the 30s, you're talking about these are neighborhood, and how many people walk to church versus
Yeah.
how many people drive. And nowadays, people drive everywhere.
Yeah.
So 400 event with 2 people in the car, that's
200 space. There is enough room for 200 spaces. It needs to be laid out intelligently. I think I don't believe that the planning board would ever let us remove the barrier that is off of Pleasant Street. So if you drive by now, there's a barrier that blocks you from entering the Pleasant Street way. That's specifically because of the traffic concerns. But the parking lot, we'd have to draw lines for that kind of capacity, and that would be part of the process to make sure we minimize that as much as possible, so that there's not so much traffic leaving that space.
a couple of us would look at the property that's now just been bought next year.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about housing under the aging in place.
Yeah.
Kind of consortium and also land trust, multiple things I'm thinking about, but at least years ago, we had thought about a place next door, wouldn't it be lovely kind of co-housing for elderly people, and when you talk about 5 bathrooms, instead of, you know, bed and breakfast, this is the type of thing that you have widows, widowers who are wanting to stay in the community, wanting to downsize.
I would absolutely love to do that, and I'm a huge fan of that. What I would love to get is just help navigating the insurance process. That's and how to do the care. Yeah, and the zoning. Yeah, but I will tell you, I love that idea, and that to me would be, that is actually something I talked about. To be honest with you, I'm not in healthcare, so I have no idea if it's going to be like an assisted living, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's just like a co-housing thing. But And that's one of the things I would love some input and feedback, and I definitely love that idea.
A lot of the what we call single-room occupancy is the greatest loss of that level of housing.
And the good thing about all the bathrooms, they're all, well, one of them's got some stairs. There are two that are entirely. The only problem is it's a lot of stairs going up and down. But we can solve, that's a solvable problem. Yes?
Yeah, we just talked to Amanda Keys.
Sorry?
Amanda Keys at the Children's Discovery Museum. She's just recently with the Discovery Museum has bought the church
Eustace.
and then has renovated it. And I've seen some successes, but also some unearthed some challenges too. All that kind of stuff. And it might be a useful resource just to hear when
No, that's a good point. That's a good point because we've not connected directly, but I definitely someone on my list to talk to. Yeah, it'll be wonderful. No, and we've done a few events, and we usually do my daughter's birthdays there. Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it's that I will say when my father did the one in St. Andres. There was like 3 inches of pigeon poop that had to be sucked out and moved. It was, yeah, and a lot of like the windows had to be redone. Yeah, he's lucky he's a plumbing heating business. He had a bunch of carpenters and such. They can make it, yeah. So, Joe?
I wanted to ask about your project at the other church.
Yeah.
Besides the kitchen, can you talk about how that went, what the learnings were? Is there anything from that project that your lessons you're taking into this one?
I think one of the things that I'm trying to avoid is the cost of his fire suppression, because it was $350,000 just for the fire suppression. Yeah.
You're talking sprinkling?
Yeah. And I think that's largely because of the way they laid it out, because they created some open kitchens in the sanctuary space. Whereas the Sacred Heart Church, the kitchen's isolated to the basement. So I don't know. I'm going to talk to engineers and do a little more and talk to the State Fire Marshal Office to see what they'll allow. They did allow for that, the former soup kitchen to get approved for fire suppression. So my hope is that we can have a lower cost of fire suppression for the building by doing that. That's one of the big ones. I think one thing that I want to replicate is they did a lot of community cleanup days and a lot of like getting the community involved. I do want to engage with the trade companies locally to see where because that was a big part of what happened there. There were carpenters who would do things at cost. They would donate materials, and that's another reason to do this as a nonprofit. It was a very uplifting night. I went down for the opening, and there were like 300 or 400 people showing up to open that place as a teen center. And now they give out 250 breakfasts a day. And so I don't know. In my head, I'm hoping that we can get to that night. That's my hope. Yes, sir.
So, just curious. I realize any answer you might give
Yeah.
is going to be aspirational at this point, but
Yeah.
what's your time frame for developing the property?
Yeah, so I think the church, realistically, we're talking 18 to 24 months to do something. Yeah, I think that part of that will be how well the financing goes. I've already gotten some donations for the actual church itself. We're covering cost on the other 2 buildings at the moment, but the raising the capital to do everything else in the church is probably an 18 to 24 months period.
And I think you said you were in the process of applying for 501c3 status?
Yeah. So it takes like 6 to 9 months before it comes through. We're using the Central Maine Betterment Collaborative to act as our fiscal sponsor at the moment.
So once you officially become a 501c3, are we going to see some massive public fundraising campaign going on, lots of publicity?
That would, I'd hope to do that sooner than later, but yes, that's the hope. And also that's also when I talk about like the pews, the idea would be that would be for the benefit of the church. And so I'd want to make that a public fundraiser if that's something we decide to do.
There was a time when churches raised money that way by selling pews. People would buy a pew.
Hmm.
If you look at old church, you might look at old pews at old church. You might see the name of the family that bought the pew. That paid for that pew to be in the church. It would be their family pew. But
Yeah.
This kind of the same thing in reverse.
Yeah, and well, we've gotten requests. People have kind of just stopped by and seen me in the rectory, knocked on the door one day, and say, "Hey, can I buy a pew?" I'm like, "Not yet. I don't own it, but we'll let me contact you later." So that's the hope, right? But again, I want to be sensitive. This is a place that has a lot of sentimental value to a lot of people. I don't want to be insensitive to that. It's good. Any more girls? We okay? Thank you for all your feedback, and thank you for giving your input. And I hope you all stay involved. And I'd love to see you there. If you want to come visit, I'd love to take you through. It still looks beautiful inside. There's a little bit of bat stuff everywhere, but other than that, it's looking great. Thank you.